Welcome to our community users group today. We're very excited to have so many people joining us. And this session is one that I've been eager to host for a while. We have so many ways to update your Salesforce records with Cloudingo. And it's often difficult to know which tool will be best for which type of job. And so what we're going to do today is just walk through all of your options and then let you know, have a few examples of how you can use each of them. So today, Olivia is standing by. She is taking any questions. So while we're going to cover the different topics and how you can do things, we want you to be able to get your specific questions answered. So please feel free to be as detailed as you want. If we're not able to handle it on the call during our session today, we'll follow up with detailed instructions or even a time for us to meet so that we can cover everything. So let's dive in. What we want to look at is your navy menu bar on the left. And we're going to start, of course, with our tools menu. And since all of you are already Cloudingo users, you know that these are all of the different functions we have with Cloudingo. And the first place we're going to stop on this exploration of your updating jobs is the import wizard, which is a little counterintuitive, but what this lets you do is there are two ways that you can perform updates with Cloudingo's import wizard. So the first thing we want to think about, just to back up and put this all in context, when you get ready to do an update job, think about, are you updating the same value on all the records, or are we trying to update unique values on each record that needs updating? So what the import wizard would let you do is take a CSV file, and the two types of jobs that you'll do here, one would be to scan for duplicates. And this says that we don't know the record ID, but we want to find it while we're here. And then merge the records to update the fields that we want to update. The second type of job is to update existing Salesforce records, and this only requires a Salesforce ID. So you could just have two columns. One is the ID, and the second column is a column with the field values that can be completely different for each record that you'd like to update. And an example of that might be first quarter of the year. You want to come in and update your annual revenue for key target accounts. And so you have the Salesforce ID, and then you have the annual revenue that you want to replace. So all we need are those two columns. The ID identifies the record, and then we just push the update. So it's a very simple way to update multiple records super easily with different values for each record. Now, when you're doing the scan, just like you would on an import, the benefit to this tool and this type of update is that you know the merge rules are very customizable. So you could say for certain fields we want to just fill in if it's empty, and you'll have the ability to choose the value from your import file. And you could also say certain fields we want to do a combined list so that we have everything, and other fields we just want to completely overwrite. It doesn't matter what's there. So that gives you a little flexibility and some ideas on which tool. If you have an ID and you're just simply replacing a value, the update with the ID is super quick and easy. If you're scanning and you don't have the ID, but you want to handle different fields differently, just fill in blank fields or override completely or do a combined list. We have the ability to do that based on the merge rules. Now we're going to go on down to our update tab, and this is where you would expect to find the update job. And this type of update is wonderful because what it allows you to do is to build a filter, and you're all familiar with how to build filters, And these can be reused. So for instance, if you wanted to build a filter to update owners, maybe we say we've realigned our territories and everything in Texas should be owned by Aaron. So we could build a filter, make that change, and then you'll see in our next type of job, which is update matching records, then we could update the contacts so that they're owned by the same person who owns the account. So you could have a job like this set up on your dashboard and just change out the owner IDs as needed. Another example of updating records is to simply update the formatting. So this is an example of a job where we say, okay, we want to look at the records. And you could either do it to clean up your whole database once, or you could have this as a recurrent job where you run it every weekend to clean up everything, all the new leads that have come in the past week. And we would say what we want to do is use title case. For the first name, the last name, and the company. We'd like the phone number to be formatted with parentheses and a hyphen. If you have an extension, you can specify, would you like it to be EXT or just an X? So you can tell Cloudingo as many fields as you want, what type of formatting you'd like to do and how to update it. And these jobs can be scheduled just like your other jobs. As a matter of fact, your update jobs could even be scheduled hourly if you ever came up with a use for needing to update records that frequently. Maybe some sort of update that happens as soon as a new record comes in. Another type of job that you may not have thought about, but all of these that I'm sharing with you today came from examples that customers asked me. They had a job they wanted to do, and we came up with how to do it. So you can actually move information from one field to another. And I know in some countries, the mobile phones start with one prefix and the landlines, your business phones, start with another. So you could actually go in and say, we want to find all the records where mobile phone or where the business phone has a value and move that to the mobile phone and then update the field to empty. So that would clear it out. This is also a nice type of job if you have multiple phone fields. And you know we have your field analysis report where you can look at what percentage of your fields are being populated. So this is a nice way to do just some good cleanup overall, where you look, do you have redundant fields, where maybe you can have just a few fields that are more heavily populated. So that's another example of when you could find some of those extraneous phone fields and move the information from them into either a business or just a secondary phone field. Update to abbreviation. This one I'm going to actually go into because this is an interesting type of job. This is a job that would let you take several different values and update it. It's kind of like a find and replace. So what I've done is said the mailing street contains lane, road, avenue, and what I wanted to do for the update is to replace avenue with AVE, road with RD, and lane with LN. So the benefit to this is you don't have to have a full address like you would if you're doing an address validation. And you could use it for any country. You just build a list of what the value we've chosen and how you would like to replace or update it. So that could be used. I'm sure you'll think of other ways that you may want to use that. Another example, I asked one of my colleagues in support, and she said sometimes customers change their domain. So you may have a company who's, well, we're a good example. We used to be symphonicssource.com, and we're now cloudingo.com. So if you had several members of our team as customers, you could do an update and say they should all be cloudingo.com. So that's another example of how that could be used. Now, when we're doing updates with these jobs, we're just going to take a step back since we've gone into this one to review. Tab 1, of course, you're going to see the name on your dashboard, so you want to understand what we're trying to do. Tab 2 is where you can either select the criteria, like I've said, the mailing street contains lane, road, or avenue, or you can use an existing Salesforce report. So if you have a very advanced update you'd like to do, and you've already run a report in Salesforce, just make sure that the true 18-digit ID, your actual Salesforce record ID, is the first column there. And then you could use the report rather than building a query to tell us the records that need to be updated. And finally, you could use a dedupe filter if you're trying to update something on before merging records. Then we're going to talk about tabs 3 and tab 4. We just talked about tab 3, which is what would you like to update? And you can use as many fields as you want. So in the example where we talked about formatting, 3 or 4 different fields, I could literally add all of the fields and say what type of update would I like to perform. The second way that these update jobs can be used, but you're never going to use tab 3 and tab 4 in the same job, is that you could build a filter where you want to assign a campaign. And a nice example of this would be if you have a job and you say, when we have leads that have been created more than 6 months ago, they're still in the new status and there's no activity, we'd like to try and jumpstart those customers. So let's go ahead and have them auto-assigned to a campaign that we create. And then you could schedule this to run automatically, and anybody who meets that criteria would get added to the campaign. But as I say, when you do these update jobs, you'll either be using tab 3, which is updating fields, or tab 4, where you're doing a job like adding a campaign, but not both. They wouldn't be used in the same filter. Now let's move on to a different type of job. So we're going to come back. We're going to go to our tools, and we're now going to move on to update matching records. The most common use for this is to say update contacts to some values on the owner. So the primary reason most companies would use this, you reassigned accounts. Now you need to make sure that all of the contacts are owned by the same person who owns the account. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to go in, and it's a very simple job. We're going to say edit, and we come in and we say what needs to match. The account ID on the contact has to match the account ID on the account. That's how we know which records to update. And then the next tab is where we say we're going to update the owner ID to the master field, which is the owner ID on the account. Now, as you can see, if you wanted, of course, you could update if you're trying to update everyone to a specific value or update fields to empty. You have those options also. But when you're trying to do the update based on the account, you'll choose the master field and then choose that field. So that's another super useful type of job. And if you choose to set one of these up, you have it on your dashboard, and anytime that you want to use it, you can. Now, another option we have that you would want to be much more careful when you put in place, but we get requests occasionally for people who want to set up some sort of a hierarchy, a parent and child account ID. So if you build a filter where, for instance, you say we have all the accounts names match, you could do an update job where you take the master record, which is going to be the parent, and populate that ID into the parent account ID on all of the other records. So as I say, you'll want to be sure you're setting that up very carefully and test a few before you were to run it. But that would help you if you're just starting to use a hierarchy structure and you'd like to have a parent account in place and need a way to set that up.
Hi, Beth. We have a quick question.
Wonderful. And a friend?
Sorry about that. Yes. So someone pinged, is there a way to upload a list of IDs rather than a report?
For this particular type of job, is that what they're talking about?
That's one of the question came in, yep.
Let's see, edit. You could, yes, let's see, on tab 2, fields. Actually, I would not use this. If you have the list of IDs, right, what I would do is use the update with Salesforce ID that we looked at first on the import wizard. The records already exist. All we're trying to do is update those records with the parent ID value. So if you have the IDs, that would be the simplest way to do it rather than building this type of filter. You would just go back to the tools and it's import update with Salesforce ID, and you would have your 2 columns. One are the record IDs that you want to update, and then in the second column, you would name that parent account ID, and you could paste one and copy it to all, and then you're updating that parent ID into all of those specific records. So that's really the simplest way to do that one. Excellent question. I'm glad you guys are paying attention. So another type of update job, you can update fields to empty. And an example of that, I'm going to come back to just our update jobs. Everyone has seen where people have filled in junk emails, and then you're going to merge or to clean up records. So now it's not only hard to find matching based on email, but also if you do build a filter, for instance, last name, first name, and company, or some other fields, phone number, you also don't want to end up picking a junk value like none@noone.com when you have a real value in another record. So you could come in here and you could create a delete specific junk emails from that email field. And so I'll just give you an idea of how this could be set up. We're going to come down, and I've said the email contains a non-anonymous spelled that way. You could put none@noone. You just want to say contains enough of the value so you're pulling in actual junk emails as opposed to something that's too small and might pull in real email values. And then what you do for the update is it's the email field. We're going to say update that field to empty. And that way when you're merging one record that has a valid email with now the blank field, you still retain the real email, and you've gotten rid of a lot of those junk emails that clutter up your system and you certainly can't send to anyway. So it helps in a number of different ways. So this is an excellent type of job to test and to put together some ideas. Let's see, next we want to go to, we have a type of job that is not normally thought of as an update job, but it will serve that purpose for you. The limitation is our validation jobs are based on US Postal Service deliverable addresses. So it requires that it's an address actually in the United States. And we do require that you have at least a street address, because otherwise we're not saying, is this company at this particular address? What we're doing is we're looking to see if the address is valid based on US Postal Service deliverable addresses. So let's see if we can pull up one here, just to give you an example. And what happens when you run an automated validation, it says, yes, this is a real address and standardizes it for you, or it would flag it as, no, we can't find this, it's not a valid address, in which case at least you know that, and maybe you could have run a report on those and have somebody do a little more research. Probably it's not important on contacts, but it would be on accounts. But this is an example. So the current record has 107 Via Florence number 5. It should actually be apartment 5. We just have Newport for the city and this as the zip. So it's actually Newport Beach, California. So we had enough that we could determine this is a real address, but this is how it should be formatted. And this is the zip +4. So these are the fields that get updated for you. And then the record is tagged as having been validated. So it doesn't pull into your queue again to need to be checked. So that's nice. I think a nice time to do some address validation is after you've done a little bit of cleanup, because there's no point validating lots of addresses that are going to be merged together, right? But it is helpful at a certain point to then have the correct format, and if you want to use those addresses for other things, or if you happen to be a customer who still mails to people, you can use it that way as well for having the correct mailing address. The one caveat we're going to give you to that, this is the only part of our tool that's pay as you go. So for the addresses, it's very nominal, but you would want to add address credits. It's like 25,000 credits for $50. And you can update that anytime from within your tool. So we've gone through lots of types of jobs and ideas of how you can do updates, some that can be automated and remain in place. Others might be one-time jobs. So the things to think about, just to summarize a little, and then we certainly want to have all of your questions. Is this a job where I'm updating just a specific value that needs to be overwritten and I know the IDs, or is it a job where I need to build a query to pull in the records? Is it something we want to run on a routine basis, like updating owners, where you probably want to have that filter on your dashboard and you can just change it out by owner? Or is it something that's going to be a very specific, highly detailed one-time job, and then you don't need to leave it on your dashboard? So at this point, I would say anyone who has questions, please let Olivia know. We would love for this to be small enough to be in a conversational format, but since we're limited by our sharing view, if you share questions with Olivia, or if you feel like it's a job that you would just like to talk through with someone on our team, you can submit a case right here from your Cloudingo dashboard and give information about what your question is, what the type of job, and the more details you give us, the more specific answers we can help you with.
Awesome. We do have a few questions, Beth.
Wonderful.
Yes, the first one is, can we update only the records that have been modified? Example, when an account change on a contact, I want to change the owner, but I don't want to check all the contacts, only the ones that actually had a change.
So you could put in, for instance, I think I get the question. If you do a big update account owners, and now you only want to update those specific contacts on those accounts, one way you could do it would be to say, to put in a requirement that the record has to have been updated like within the last 24 hours. You might pull in some that have been updated for something else. But we're not able to run a query that says only when the account has changed, and I think that's what you're getting at, only if the account has changed, because what we're doing by that type of job where you're marrying the account owner to the owner of the contact is we're actually not looking and pulling a filter first, we're doing a live update to say make it match. So I can get back with you and see if we can come up with a way around that. But the short answer is unless you added something in like the account was updated within the last certain period of time, which you certainly could, or only records where the accounts are owned by certain people. Like if you just updated a couple owners instead of everybody, you wanted to say, we only want to update the contacts where one of the account owners is these 5 people, right? So that would limit it. So maybe that gives you some ideas, and I'll try to follow up with any other thoughts that people on the team have.
Perfect. And then we have one more question. I'm very new to Cloudingo, so this may or may not even apply. Is there any kind of limit to how many data record uploads you can do per day, etc.?
No, we don't limit. Once you have purchased a tool, it's yours. You're just limited by the process time. So depending on what type of upload you do, you can import records. The more complex a merge involved, of course, it's going to be a little bit slower because there's reparenting of objects. But if you're just doing lead lists and you do not turn on the undo restore, it should be fairly quick. And the file size can be up to 20 megabytes now. So we've increased that file size. So there's quite a bit you can get done in a day. But we don't tell you, no, you can only do 2 uploads a day or 3 uploads a day. It's up to what comes in and what you can do.
Perfect. Okay, and then we did see the validation of contact update of address. In the same way, can we update on the account for address?
Absolutely, absolutely. I just chose to show just one that I knew I had a couple fields that would show what the change would be. So yes, these filters are available in your filter library. If you don't have them on your dashboard already, so you can go into the filter library and get the address validation. They're going to be system filters. I have so many. Let me see. So it's going to be one of these system filters, and it's going to be address validation. You can populate it onto your dashboard, and here they are, the address validation. It got separated from the others. So you could say, yes, what I want is one of these, and add this, create the filter, choose whether you're putting it, I imagine if you're validating, you would want it to be in production. And then just choose the user whose dashboard you would like it to be on. So I could put it on my own, or since I'm an admin on the account, I could add it to one of my other users. Then that default filter with the pre-configuration is all set up. And when you calculate totals, just like any other job, it's not going to actually process the job. It would just run the report to see how many records you have that have a billing address. If you need to refine it, if you're very international, knowing that we're using US Postal Services, you might add in a field level rule that says, and the customer has to be in the US. And if you use the pick list, you could say just US. If you don't, you could say US, comma, United States, comma, any version that you have in there. But we'll go down to that dashboard. And when you calculate, as I say, just like when you're doing any other type of job, any of your updates or any of your dedupe jobs, this is strictly running to see how many records meet this criteria. Then you get to review them, because if you needed to change something, if you say, oh, I forgot we don't want to update prospect accounts maybe, right? Or we only want to update customers. You could change whatever out you needed. You can also do it manually. But it's much quicker to just run an automation if you see that it's updating the way you would like it to be. You can also, for accounts, if you use both billing and shipping address, you could copy the filter, like I just added another one, and you can change the address fields to shipping instead of billing. So you could validate both separately.
Cool, perfect. Okay, we have another question. What is the purpose of mapping custom fields in manage object settings? Should I do this?
Manage objects setting. Oh, that's an excellent question, and let's go over and look at that. So for those who don't know what we were referring to, if we go into My Account, Manage Objects, you can see the list of fields. Well, first let's start at the top. This was not the question, but since we're here, it's a nice thing to point out. If you have the type of account that allows for multiple accounts to a single contact, Cloudingo is the only tool that has the function to remove redundant relationships and reparent the accounts so that that's not a very manual, tedious chore for you. So you'll be able to see if you have that set up in Salesforce. But what the question was referring to are adding fields here. You do not need to add fields unless you have a very large account. So if you have millions of records, the first time you use a field in Cloudingo, since we don't store your data, we need to index Salesforce to see the field values, and it locks up your account. So no one can build filters until that process is finished. And if you're new to Cloudingo and you come in and say, well, you know what, I think for the contact, we would like to use the business phone, obviously the email, we may want to build a filter based on the mobile phone. I added department just to add one to show people. So the idea is instead of indexing each time you just choose to add a different field, if you think through the fields that might make good match criteria, and that's different. That doesn't mean anything that we want to use in a merge rule. It's just the fields that you would like to use as match criteria. For instance, let's match on company, or let's match on the account name. As I say, we might want to match on mobile phone and do a phone North American match. So by adding them here, it indexes them one time, so it saves you a lot of time. And if you're either, the big time savings is if you're either a large account where having it kick off and indexing is going to take a while, and you'd like to just handle that at once with most of the fields that you may want to use, or if you're a multi-user account. Remember, if one of your teammates kicks off indexing, it's also going to lock your filters. So it might be good for you to get together in the beginning as you're just starting to set up filters and talk about what fields you may need to use. Come in, let them all index once, and then people can build out any filters, and it's going to go very quickly. Did that answer that question, hopefully?
I think so. And if not, we can reach out directly, or they can reach out too. So we'll follow up. I have another question about address validation.
Sure.
Can you use the address validation to normalize data in the state field? We cannot use the state pick list for a variety of reasons, so this would be helpful for cleaning that field. Additionally, can you do a job to fix the proper case of a field? Example, change all caps Alabama to lowercase Alabama.
Yes to both of those, but it would not be with the address validation. We're just going to go back to our update filters. One of the transforms we have is state names to state codes or vice versa, and country names to country codes. So we'll just edit this just to show you how you would set that up. And so all you would have to do to build the query, I would say state has a value, right? Depending on mailing state on a contact or billing state. And then for the field, we're going to come in, and I think it was the state code, right? Whoops, sorry about that. And I already had it here. Okay, so what we've done is a transform. Where did we go? US state name to the code, or if you want the reverse, you can say, no, we would like to make sure we're always, if we have the code, showing the whole state. And that will be title case. If you ever just needed to do title case on a field, you can also do that. If you do this, we're using title case The code would be all uppercase, but the name would be. And as I say, one of the transforms you can do, title case is what you were talking about, where you do the first letter is capital and the rest is lowercase versus all uppercase or all lowercase.
Perfect. And then we have a question about undo and restore. Can you go over the undo and restore for us? I apologize if I missed it. Curious the retention time of the undo abilities.
Absolutely. Okay, so the way you get to your undo restore is under your tools menu. It's the last one on the page. And we're going to come down, and even if you have the enterprise or professional license, which comes with this, you do need to enable it because this requires Cloudingo to back up the field values on the records at the time of the merge. So what you will do is you're going to enable first where you would like it backed up. And you have several choices. You can back it up on the Cloudingo IBM server. You could back it up in the Cloudingo Amazon or Microsoft Azure. If you'd like to back it up in your own storage, you could have it backed up to your own Amazon or Azure account. Just know that if you back it up to your own server, we don't have access to that, so it would never be deleted unless you create a job to go and delete it, so it will add to your storage. Now, the retention time is here. This is, I think, what the question was about. So you can say, do we want it just for merging or merging and converting? And remember, that would be cleaning up like leads when you also have an existing contact. The retention policy comes as a default of 30 days. But there's no difference in price or anything that you would see on your end. So as long as you're backing it up, you may want to go ahead and give yourself the extra 2 weeks. Give yourself 45 days, which would be our maximum. I'm having trouble. And then the idea of mapping down here, the objects to track, is, you know, if you merge accounts, we're moving the contacts over to the winning account, the opportunities, the tasks, the notes and attachments, all of that goes over onto the winning account. If you needed to restore, what happens is we recreate the child records, right? The ones that were deleted. And so we need to know where to reparent all of these objects. Also, that's the idea behind the quick track of the IDs for notes and attachments. We want to know where to put those back as well. And most people on imports, I'll just give you a little heads up, most people are going more for speed, especially if you're importing a new lead list and you're just doing some minor updates on existing records, like adding them to a campaign. So the default here is to not do a backup on your imports, just knowing that the backup is going to slow down the merge or import process, but you certainly are welcome to if you would like to. Once you have it, all you have to do is save, and this is per platform. So now that I've turned it on in my production org, my other 2 users, Sunny Day and Clear Night, they don't have to set anything up. Their merges are going to be backed up as well. But you would, if you wanted to try it out in a sandbox, you do have to enable it per platform. So it's per platform, but it doesn't have to be set up for each user. Once you've got it enabled and turned on, it's turned on. And if there are any follow-up questions about that undo restore, be sure and let me know.
All right, looks like we have one more question. Is there a way of automatically converting a lead to a contact if a donation comes in on their record?
I feel like what I'd like to say is a little caveat is maybe we can schedule a session to work together on that. I feel like the answer would be yes. You can do a lead convert to a contact with an account. I'm sure that means you're using the nonprofit, so it would be the household and the person. We would want to look at what the trigger is that would that would be a convert job, right? Mass converting records. And so we just need to look at how we qualify that one for being converted. And so maybe there's a field that gets updated when it comes in, or if it goes from blank to has a value. That convert would not be real time, but the convert jobs can be scheduled, so you could have it happen, for instance, on a daily basis. But as I say, I'm just thinking that through. I haven't had that request before, so I feel like there's a way to make it happen. But would love for if you want to email in, and we'll schedule a time to meet, see if I can help you with that.
Perfect. And then if we didn't get to any of your questions, we will follow up directly. Beth, do you want to close us out?
Yes, thank you so much for participating today. We really appreciate having you on the call, having your feedback. Also, send us ideas, send us parts of the tools that would be helpful for us to cover in future. These sessions are designed because we want to get to know our customers and your needs better, and to tailor some more advanced sessions for those of you who have been out there working for a while, and also for you new users who are exploring different ways to use Cloudingo. So we want to thank you very much. We do have a little PDF that's going to go out. It's going to cover everything that I've talked about in a much more organized fashion. I was a little thrown with some camera setting issues right at the last minute here. So you didn't need to memorize anything from today. We've got a little collateral as well as a recording that will go out. And we'd love to hear from you with any questions, comments, suggestions, or ways that we can help you in the future. So very genuinely, on behalf of Olivia and myself, thank you so much for joining.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Beth.
Bye.